Hello, I'm Cynthia. Welcome back to part 2 of the Know Your Soils presentation. I'm just going to bring up the PowerPoint and share the screen. And we need to, there we go. It always takes a couple of minutes to get that organized. So we started last time with a segment covering how soils form, where they come from, and how the landscape influences the kind of soils that we have. This time we ended last time on this slide about the soil food web. So we're going to pick up here this time again and delve into this fascinating topic a little bit more. The diagram in the last slide about the soil food web was originally published in the Soil Biology Primer, which is a publication of the Soil and Water Conservation Society in cooperation with USDA NRCS. And these links are available to you if you would like to get your own copy. The Soil and Water Conservation Society has print copies available, I believe, and you can order from them. Otherwise, you can download a copy, an edited version from the USDA link below. So we will go back to the soil food web slide and pick up on this theme of a web of soil life that is mostly unseen to humans. It's unseen because we tend not to look too closely below the soil surface on a regular basis, and because most of the life in the soil is too small to be seen without a microscope. The idea of a soil food web refers to all the life in the soil, from the roots of plants to many other organisms of different sizes, each performing their own special role in the cycle of life. And we call these differing roles trophic levels. And you can see along the bottom of this diagram, the soil food web has 5 different trophic levels. This term refers to where in the chain of feeding a particular organism lies. We humans are at the top of the overall food chain, the highest trophic level. In the soil food web, there are just 5 trophic levels. The first trophic level, seen on the left-hand side, has the photosynthesizers. So these are the plants and some small microbes that both of these types of organisms can receive the sun's energy and through photosynthesis convert it into carbohydrates, the prime energy source for all living organisms. As we can see in this diagram, the soil food web continues to increase in size of organism as it moves through the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th higher trophic level. All the activities in the soil food web are really about one type of organism eating other types and converting the nutrients that they eat into forms that are usable by plants or by other creatures. For example, minerals which are weathered from the soil's parent material, the rock, as we learned in part 1 of the series, those minerals have to be converted to forms that a plant can recognize by its roots. And then the roots can take in those nutrients in the precise form that they need. Plants metabolize the nutrients to build plant structure or use nutrients in physiological processes within the plant. Without the intermediate organisms decomposing the minerals, plants would not have access to many of the essential nutrients that they need to grow. In this way, essential inputs of energy and nutrients are cycled through the soil environment. Let's circle back to the diagram on the healthy soil ecosystem that we looked at in part 1. Because an ecosystem by definition is cyclical, there is no waste in a natural system, only inputs cycling around. Unfortunately, a lot of the systems that human beings have put in place are linear and not cyclical. When we think about agriculture or manufacturing, there are inputs into the system that do not come from the same location. They are resources brought from many different parts of the world to provide the basic ingredients needed. In agriculture, this would be farm equipment, or it could be fertilizers and various agricultural chemicals. And then at the end of the operation, there's waste, which has to be taken off-site and disposed of in some way. So that's a linear system and doesn't really reflect how nature works. Unfortunately, we do see in this diagram that human action is an outlier in the cycle of soil health, as I have described. So in this case, tilling and cultivating the soil, causing compaction, removing topsoil, causing erosion, all of this removes and destroys soil health. But a healthy soil ecosystem is very valuable and worth protecting because it provides many ecological services that we need to keep the planet and ourselves healthy. For example, an increase in the movement of nutrients and the ability of the soil to hold on to nutrients. The organisms and organic matter in the soil bind soil particles together into aggregates, improving soil structure and the water holding and water infiltration capacity of a soil. Many soil organisms also attack pathogens, and that reduces plant diseases in plants that are growing in a healthy soil ecosystem. There's also promising research going on showing that a healthy soil ecosystem may help to degrade pollutants through various pathways. This in turn improves water quality of water draining off of land. Healthy soils also increases biodiversity, and a well-structured soil with organic matter is better protected from soil erosion. Lastly, a healthy soil sequesters carbon dioxide, thus reducing carbon emissions into the atmosphere and helping to reduce and mitigate climate change. Complex soil food web has uncountable numbers of microorganisms of all different kinds. In this photograph, we're looking at bacteria. These little rod-shaped or rice-shaped structures are magnified bacteria. In soils, we can also find fungi, actinomycetes, amoebae, nematodes, and various flagellates and ciliates. The bacteria alone are so numerous that there are over 1 billion bacteria in a teaspoon of ordinary garden soil. Incredible to think about that. Here we see the difference in size between the bacteria, again, these little rice-shaped structures, which are now stuck on the outside of fungal hyphae. Fungal hyphae are the filaments that grow into big networks and fungal mats in the soil. So here we can see a distinct difference in size. That's why there are so many more bacteria in the soil, in a teaspoon of soil, than there are of fungi. Some kinds of bacteria are able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere. But these bacteria have to live in a symbiotic relationship with roots of certain kinds of plants. Many of us know about leguminous plants such as peas, beans, clover, and many other types of plants that we think capture nitrogen from the atmosphere. However, it really isn't the plant doing this, it's the bacteria that fixes the nitrogen and provides that nitrogen to the plants in exchange for the carbohydrates that plants are making through photosynthesis. This is a symbiotic relationship. In this microscope, in this magnified picture taken through a microscope, we can see labeled colonies of bacteria, fungal hyphae, soil mineral particles, protozoa, organic matter, and microscopic clumps of various types. Now, all soil organic matter starts from plant or animal debris on the ground. On the left, we see a rotting log, a common sight in woodlands. And we can see that it is slowly decomposing through the action of fungi and other organisms. Insects, woodpeckers, fungi are the most important one. On the right is leaf litter, which is commonly seen covering forest ground surfaces under trees. And these decompose also to replenish the soil ecosystem. Dead animals on the ground surface, like insects or mammals or organisms and animals of many different types, all animals on the planet, once they die, they slowly decompose through the action of microorganisms and add to the organic matter of the soil profile. That would also include the waste and manure, in addition to plant waste, which we saw in the previous slide. Fecal material of all living creatures is also broken down through decomposition and adds to the health of the soil by releasing nutrients and providing organic matter. Physical disturbance of the soil through the action of creatures of various sizes, like the millipede in the picture on the right, or larger animals that tunnel through the soil, earthworms, voles, moles, and a variety of other animals that spend part of their time or all of their time underground. An earthworm is seen in the center of this photograph, and also they are very important for creating and burrows and tunnels through the soil that allow air and water to move easily through the soil profile. Earthworms also drag leaves along with them into the tunnels, and they eat the leaves and leave their own fecal material, which we call worm castings, behind in the soil, which in turn adds to the organic matter and nutrition of the soil environment. The white threads we see in this frame are called mycelia. They're also sometimes referred to as hyphae, fungal hyphae, which I mentioned earlier. These are the vegetative structures of fungi, and they're usually hidden from view in soil or under logs. Here we see where I have taken off the top surface of leaf litter, exposing the damp, wet, darker leaves underneath, where we can see the fungus growing nicely through this protected, moist environment, creating a network of fungal filaments, which is helping to break down the dead organic material. Mushrooms are the reproductive phase of fungi, and this is the part of a fungus that we humans are most familiar with. because many of us like to eat mushrooms, and plus they're visible above the ground surface. And so they're easy to see when you take a walk in the woods or fields. In this slide, we see the results of an unhealthy soil ecosystem. This soil in a farm setting has been over-tilled, causing a breakdown in soil structure. Left bare to the winter elements, the soil has experienced serious erosion. We can see a narrow channel on the left-hand side where water has eroded the soil from the higher parts of the hillside down to the lower base of the hill. The soil here is seen at the edge of a cultivated field, and it has collected here and will eventually move on off to the right, where at the present it's the edge of the field, and there's a woodland and a weedy buffer there. That vegetation is actually slowing down the movement of the soil any further. Beyond the woodland edge is a large farm pond. Eventually, through the action of water, this sediment will reach the pond, and it will be carried down out of the pond through streams into larger watercourses and rivers and lakes, and eventually will make its way to Long Island Sound. Over the last 2 centuries, much of North America's best farm soils have unfortunately been eroded into the oceans around the coastline. This is true all over the world on every continent. This example is in the Gulf of Mexico, where the Mississippi River Delta enters the Gulf of Mexico, and we can see in this satellite photograph the brown area just off the coastline, covering really quite a large area, where sediment that has been carried down in the river has settled into the Gulf, smothering out the life of the ocean in this area. Fortunately, there are actions that we can take to promote a healthy soil food web and a healthy soil ecosystem. These actions are not difficult, and with education and the willingness of people to try to change their actions, we can start to restore the health of our soils. We can reduce the amount of tilling and digging that goes on in soils. We can reduce compaction. We can add compost, which is decomposed organic matter from yard waste and kitchen waste. Farm animal manure can also be composted and returned to the soil as a form of fertilizer and physical organic matter. We can also use organic mulches on the surface of the soil to keep it covered from the elements. And we can grow cover crops, which is a type of living mulch. Also, avoiding chemicals, insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides from entering the soil is a very important aspect of keeping the life in the soil healthy and functioning, and providing those ecosystem services that we need so much. This is the end of part 2 of this Know Your Soil presentation. If you haven't seen part 1, I really would encourage you to go back and watch it so that you will fill in the gaps of certain information that we covered to lay the basis for part 2. Part 3 will be coming soon, and I hope that you will join me again in a week or 2 when part 3 is available on our website at nwcd.org. In part 3, we will be looking at the structure of the soil and the chemistry of the soil and how they work together to provide the nutrition and irrigation that plants need to grow. Thank you very much. See you next time.